Good morning, friends. Today we will start talking about Scoop. Um, for the practical purpose, go to itversity.com and I have uploaded, so you can use this link to directly go to Scoop. Let me share in the chat. So this is the URL which you can use to practice hands-on purpose. Okay, and it covers how to use Cloudera Quick Start VM and also Cloudera Single Node Lab on Cloud as well as CloudX Lab. All three will be covered. For Cloudera Quick Start VM and Single Node Lab on Cloud, there are not much differences, but CloudX Lab there are a little bit of differences because CloudX Lab is on Hortonworks. Okay, and then these are the topics covered. Introduction about Spark, and then a Scoop import into Hadoop, a Scoop export from Hadoop, and then some advanced concepts called handling delimiters and file formats. So for practice purposes, I will suggest you to go through the entire lesson and perform hands-on. And also when you get into the individual topic, you will see the topics on the right hand side also once you get into this lesson. And here you can, whatever you are using, whether you are using Quick Start VM or CloudX Lab, you can click on the appropriate link and it will cover them almost all aspects of it. Okay. There should be one more topic in this. I will look into it. One of the topics are missing, where it talks about. Yeah, it's no, not this one. There should be one more topic. So just give me a minute. Anyway, I will take care of it later. So there should be another video about introduction about Scoop, another topic about introduction about Scoop, which I need to add it here. Then you can start working on import. So what I will be covering in the class, if all are here in the lab, sorry, in YouTube and also uploaded in LMS. So I will be covering the important aspect of Scoop and also important concepts of Scoop, how it works, and all those things are not covered here. This is primarily intended for certification, where they directly get into the Scoop and just practicing it without thinking much about Scoop concepts, architecture, common issues that pops up into the that pops up as part of while running the Scoop. So I will be covering some of those topics here, and also you should perform hands-on, because these are all open source technologies and they beat our common sense. We over time, once we start reading or start evaluating certain things, we will come up with assumptions. But as it is open source, it's completely inconsistent, and many times it beats our common sense that is built by learning or exploring a particular technology. So you have to practice it, and you need to understand what works and what does not work. I will give an example before getting into the details. So there is so Scoop import is used to connect to the source database and load data into HDFS, and Scoop export is used to connect to the HDFS and read data from HDFS and write into databases using JDBC, connecting using JDBC. So when it comes to Scoop import, as it connects to traditional relational databases, we can issue the queries and we can run whatever query we want. So Scoop import have a lot more options than Scoop export, but a lot of guys assume that as we can get delta from Scoop import using using many options that are available with import, Lot of guys assume that even we can query the data from Hive, and we can actually perform the delta in and delta export from Hadoop into relational database. And also some people even assume that Scoop is capable enough to filter the data from HDFS to export data to database, but that is not the case. And I got that comment from Cloudera SME, who is supposed to drive the solutions. Because he didn't have enough hands-on experience on all these things, he made incorrect assumptions after exploring import without focusing much on export. So it's very dangerous to build the assumptions without practicing. You have to practice these open source technologies, otherwise you will hit a lot of surprises and roadblocks. Okay, so I'm explaining this to emphasize the importance of practicals. If you don't practice, then again, no matter how effective I explain, within a couple of weeks we will be back to square one. Okay, so that being said, now we will start talking about Scoop in detail. Before getting into the Scoop, let us recap how HDFS and MapReduce works, and then we will talk about Scoop. So last couple of classes we have spoken about MapReduce. So we will have 1 minute. We have this Hadoop cluster where we have many data nodes. No need to worry about name nodes here. And once we create a file F1 with size 1 GB with 128 MB block size and replication factor 1. Okay, then this 1 GB file will be divided into 8 blocks, and those 8 blocks will be stored here. And then when we run the MapReduce, typically the map function will read the data from these blocks, perform row level transformations, and then pass on the output of the map function after performing the row level transformations into reducer for aggregations, joins, etc. And reducer takes care of aggregations, joins, and then data will be written back into HDFS. That's the MapReduce lifecycle. So when it comes to Scoop, Scoop is a export import utility built on top of MapReduce. So when we issue a Scoop import command or Scoop export command, what they do is they will connect to some source and perform certain transformations and write those things back to some target. So for Scoop import, the source is relational database. So it does not source is relational database and target is HDFS, and it uses MapReduce to process the data, which means that internally when you issue Scoop import command, it translates that Scoop import command into MapReduce code, and that MapReduce code will be compiled into a jar file. And the way we have submitted the jar file using Hadoop jar command, internally the Scoop will actually submit that jar file to issue the MapReduce job. What does that MapReduce job do? It connects to the source database using JDBC. So we pass the necessary information to connect to JDBC and get the data. And then depending upon the arguments we pass to the Scoop command, it builds the SQL query to read the data from the source database and then write into HDFS. So I will explain in a new document. So we have source database. So I have to change the default default settings here. Okay, so this is source database. Typically databases are represented like this, and this is HDFS, and Scoop will sit between here, and scoop will be executed from gateway node. Okay, so when you issue scoop import command, what happens is it will generate a map reduce job. Actually, it generates map only job. There won't be any reducers because scoop is not capable of doing all kinds of transformations. It is capable of performing some row level transformations. Again, it is limited to some of the commands. Not all commands can perform those row level transformations also. But the main purpose of scoop is, without performing too much of transformations, connect to the source database. So the map function, what it will do, it will connect to the source database, issue a select query in the database, get the data, and then write into HDFS. So we have HDFS cluster here, and it will be written into HDFS. And it has features such as parallel threads. So there is an argument called nummappers, which will be passed, and that nummappers will be used to determine how many parallel threads should be used to process the data. So when we increase the parallelism, instead of one thread, if we try to use 4 threads, and if this source database have, let's say, so the table which we are trying to import have 1 million records. These 1 million records have to be splitted into 4 mutually exclusive subsets. Okay, ideally it should be divided into 250,000 for each subset, and each thread has to process 250,000 records connecting to the database, and then write into HDFS. So scoop process data like that. It will connect to the source database depending upon certain control arguments, issue a SQL query, and then load into HDFS. So we will see how it works, but before getting into the details, let's evaluate some of the basics of some of the other commands before getting into scoop import and export. So for the documentation, you just go to Google and say scoop user guide. So there are 2 versions of scoop. One is scoop 1 and other one is scoop 2. Scoop 1 is called as scoop itself, and scoop 2 is called scoop 2. Scoop 2 is not being used yet, but eventually scoop 2 will be used. And in scoop 2, they actually use map reduce jobs to load the data. No need to worry about at this time. Just focus on scoop 1. That is more than enough. So the most latest version is 1.4.6. When you actually search in Google for scoop user guide, it will show 1.4.2 because Google have indexed it like that because 1.4.2 is there for a long time, and it shows some outdated information. Okay, so you have to search for 1.4.6 or 1.4.5 and hit enter. Click on this one. So if you look into the scoop guides, there are 2 guides. One is user guide, and there is another one called developer guide. So the purpose of the developer guide is scoop is an open source which is developed in Java, and some people want to customize for their needs. For those guys, they will be referring to scoop developer guide. But for us, who will be using only to get data from databases and load into HDFS, or get data from HDFS and load into databases, we only use scoop as a tool. We don't make changes to the scoop source code. So we are considered to be users even though professionally we are developers. So the guide which you need to look into is scoop user guide, not scoop developer guide. If you go here, you can see that there are the documentation is well organized, and then first thing what you need to understand is there are 3 important commands. So first you need to test that you are able to connect to the database. For that, you don't need to run import or export. There are other set of commands such as list databases. So you can search for it, list databases, and list tables. So list databases will list the databases that are available on the source database server, and list tables will actually list the tables that are available within a database. Okay. So now I will demonstrate about how to validate this in CloudX Lab. Okay, so log into CloudX Lab. Click on My Lab. You will get lab credentials from here. That is correct. It is like Tailend without transformations. But Tailend might not use MapReduce to process the data. It will use its own Tailend server. It is a very good question. Let's recap towards the end of the course. I will explain in detail what is the difference between traditional ETL tools and Hadoop based tools. Okay, the main difference is traditional ETL tools need not be MapReduce based, whereas Scoop, all these Hadoop based tools such as Scoop or Hive are primarily MapReduce based. In some cases, Hive can be Spark based also. You can run Hive in both MapReduce context as well as Spark context to perform the transformations. So we will understand a lot more in detail as we proceed further, but remind me towards the end of the class, I will explain what are the limitations of traditional ETL tools and how Hadoop overcome it. I will explain that. Okay, so here you have lab credentials and MySQL credentials. So from MySQL credentials, you should be interested only for host name. You don't need to be worried about username and password. You will be able to connect to a different database called retail_DBA. 1 minute. Is it? Which screen are you seeing, Mohan? Is it only Mohan, or everyone could not see the CloudX Lab page? Okay, thank you. So we will take these questions at the end of the class, that is out of context as of now. So anything related to comparison with other tools, we will take care of at the end of the class. Okay. So in the MySQL credentials, you have the host name, username, and password. But you don't use Scoop user as username and password. We have a different database called retail_DB. Different database called retail_DB, and there is a user called retail_DBA who have access to that database. And password is ITversity. So you don't need to copy these things. So for lab, first you need to connect to the lab to execute the Scoop jobs. So only from the lab you will be able to execute. So either you can actually click on Web Console like this, which will connect to the which will connect to the gateway node of the cluster. So there is a gateway node, and here it is trying to connect to the gateway node, and it is asking for credentials. So the credentials which you need to pass here are lab credentials. So you can copy the username and password, and not only this one, you can also use a terminal like this. So if you go to terminal, you can also run SSH like this. Advantage of using terminals is you can enable passwordless login by copying the public key of yours onto the host. So if you are familiar with about passwordless login, you can actually use the terminal directly without entering the password. So if you use Cygwin or Linux terminal or Mac terminal, you can perform this task, enabling the passwordless login. But for regular developers, it might not be that relevant. But who are hardcore developers, they can leverage this passwordless login, and they might be already doing that, so they can leverage that and they can connect using the terminals also. Okay, so now I will show from here. Once you are in, there is a MySQL database, okay, which is running on host. So -u is for the user. So the user which you need to connect to the database is retail_dba. The retail_dba have full control on a database called retail_db. So don't try to mess up with the tables. Don't play with MySQL at all when you are performing the lab. Only focus on scoop. Okay, and then go to my lab. Here, go to MySQL credentials. Get the MySQL host IP, paste it here, and -p. It will prompt for the password. ITversity is the password. So we have logged into the MySQL. So here you can run show databases. And you can see retail_db database here. Use retail_db and show tables. You can see the tables here. Okay, so while practicing, you have to insert few records into these source tables. Use departments. It has only 6 records with 2 columns, not more than that. If you want to insert any records, you can make sure you use your a couple of make sure you insert only 2 or 3 records into departments, and then you do whatever you want. If you want full flexibility, you can create a different table here, and you can add few thousand records or a few 100,000 records also. There is no harm in that, but don't touch these 6 tables because they are designed for means it actually simulates actual retail data, and the data quality of these 6 tables are very good, and it will impact others when they try to practice Hive or something else after importing the data. So make sure don't mess up with the data too much of these 6 tables. You can add few records to departments if you want to get delta from the table and all. For complete flexibility, you can create your own table and practice, but don't insert millions of rows into that. The service is supposed to be lab, not the playground where you can do whatever you want. Okay, so try to use these limited resources effectively, so that the cost will be within control for people like you. Okay, so that being said, we are able to. So there is some question. We have ScoopXDB normal login. Okay, I don't know what is ScoopXDB, and good to know. I have to check. Okay. I got it. So you are connecting Scoop user from lab directly, and I think that was the case with you. Okay, so the reason why I'm asking you to connect to retail_dba is if you go to my code, I'm using the same database, so you don't need to make many changes. You just have to change your username here, because you whenever you are trying to load data into HDFS, you will get access to only directory with /user/your name, and there you can create the directory and you just replace these things for rest of the stuff. Everything else is same. So that's why I'm asking to use retail_dba. Okay, and Scoop user is a big playground. Everyone log into that without any knowledge, and they might be able to mess up some data which you are trying to use. Okay, anyway, so now we have validated from MySQL. I'm directly connecting to MySQL. Now let us see how we can validate using the scoop command. 1 minute. It is only, yeah, now it is showing up. Okay. So the most basic command to validate whether you are able to connect to the database is list databases, which list the databases that are available for the user that is logged in, and the syntax will look like this. I think it is not here, so let me just give me a minute. I will actually look into that. There should be a topic related to those also. There should be introduction topic. Okay, where are my topics? Yeah, this is the one. So that's why it is not showing up. Select a course. Okay, tags. Where are the categories? It should show categories also. That's fine. Okay, now it looks good. Now let me go to okay, now it looks good. Okay, now you can actually start from here. Okay, so when you actually try Scoop anywhere, first you need to understand how to build the JDBC URL. That is the most important aspect of it. Okay, for that, wherever MySQL is running, you can use hostname -f and get the fully qualified hostname, and then from wherever you are running a scoop command. So typically the database will be on a different node, and you will be running scoop on a different node, similar to here. So here we are connected to 183, but our database is under 154. So typically, and that will be the case. So wherever you have scoop, you have to run MySQL database, you have to run hostname -f to get the fully qualified name. And first you need to make sure that you are able to connect from the gateway node of our Hadoop cluster, from where we will be running these scoop commands. Okay. Once we are able to validate, as we have done here, by running MySQL -u, we are able to validate that we are able to connect to the source database. Now you can use this scoop eval command, which have list databases. So list databases just require username, password, and the JDBC URL. And these JDBC URLs will change. Means the format of the JDBC URL will change slightly between each of the databases. For Oracle, the URL might be a little bit different. For MySQL, it is like this. For Postgres also, it will be similar to this, but you will see pSQL or Postgres here. So depending upon the type of the database, there will be differences. You have to go through the relevant vendor documentation to build the JDBC URL properly. And then host name. Typically, almost everything will have host and port number. This is the host name, and this is the port. So after host name, you have to give colon, and then you have to give the port number. And you have to memorize these things if you want to give the certification. In certification, they might not provide this directly, but you will have scoop user guide. here there will be examples and you can search for it. Okay. But in some cases, if the in some of the certifications, if they don't provide the documentation like this, then you have to memorize and you have to give the URL. Okay. So here, then it takes two other parameters such as username and password. So each of the parameters in Sqoop is prefixed with hyphen hyphen and then parameter name and then parameter value. Okay, and the backslash at the end is to write the code in multiple lines. It is the Linux feature. It's not Sqoop related feature. We are leveraging Linux feature to write the Sqoop command in multiple lines, so it is readable for everyone. So you can copy this. If it is Cloudera, you can use this. If it is CloudX Lab, you can use this. So for getting started, there is only one topic which covers both Cloudera Quick Start VM as well as CloudX Lab. So you can just copy paste this one. You don't need to make any changes and hit enter. So now you can see that it has reported. I don't know, it is taking too much of time. So let me use this one rather than that one. Okay, you can see that there are two databases, information schema and retail_db. And if you want to check the tables, you can use the same command, similar command, but list tables instead of databases. And here we will be able to list the tables only from one database. MySQL, Postgres are multi-tenant databases, which means that you will have one MySQL server installation and you will have multiple databases available for, in the same installation. Whereas the Oracle is not a multi-tenant database. It is a single, each database will have only one database, but there will be many schemas. Okay. So if you run list tables command on Oracle database, you will give, you don't need to give the database name here, but you have to give the schema name, username and password, and whatever tables that are owned by that schema will be displayed. So you need to understand those subtle differences between the source databases. Especially most of you guys have to work with Oracle. In case of Oracle, the source database, in case of Oracle, the database server, the Oracle server can host only one database at a time, but it can have many schemas. Whereas in databases like MySQL and Postgres, there is no concept of schema. There is a user and a database. Database and schema are same in MySQL world. And each MySQL server can have multiple databases, and for each database you can grant privileges to the users. So that's a major difference between Oracle and most of these other open source databases. So here we typically don't specify database name for Oracle. Instead, we will be specifying the schema name and then username and password. So JDBC URL will be different for each of the databases depending upon those features also. For MySQL or Postgres, it is similar. You just have to say JDBC : what is the database technology we are using, then host name : 3306 is the port number for MySQL, default port number. If it does not work, then you have to check with your DBS and get the appropriate port number, and you have to replace the port number here. In our case, we have 3306 as port. So if 3306 is the default port, you don't need to specify the port number here. You can actually say /retaildb also, but make sure you always specify port number even though it is not required, so that you are aware of this port number. If you don't use, then you might get lost somewhere. Okay, so you can run this command. So there is some issue with this. There is a space after backslash. That's why it is causing problem. Anyway, I will fix that later. I hope you got the idea. I can actually run directly from here. OVI. Okay, now it will work. So you should not have any character after the backslash to write the command in multiple lines. So even if you use backslash with multiple lines, when you go back to the history, it will get it in one line. So that's why you see this second line in one line, because when we go to the history, it removes the backslashes and it will format into one line. So here you can see multiple tables, categories, customers, departments, order items and orders, as well as products. The same output, such as the same output which we got using show tables command is here. Okay. So and then you can also run, still if you want to make sure that you are able to connect to database and run the queries, there is another command called eval. So using eval, you can issue any command in the database using JDBC. It need not be select query. You can use update, you can use delete, you can use insert, you can use any command. So this will actually confirm that we are able to read the data. It will also confirm that the user retail_dba have necessary permissions on retail_db without running the scoop import or export commands. Eval is very important command after import and export. So scoop is just an export import utility. You cannot use it is not a self-contained application, which means that you cannot just develop a scoop command and assume that it will run on daily basis. It is not the case. Scoop have set of commands using which you can develop a data integration platform to connect to the source database and load into the HDFS or vice versa. Okay. So while you are doing that, when you actually perform delta loads on daily basis using a application, you have to log the information what is completed and what is not completed thus far. For that reason, once the scoop import is done on daily basis as part of the application, you have to mark, you have to update certain information either in a log table, or that's what I'm explaining the advantage of the eval. So the advantage of the eval is when you actually implemented data integration platform. Okay, you have to use scoop import and export as part of shell scripting or some other programming language to build a complete application. And when if you are from ETL background, you will understand it very easily. After processing is done, we will be updating some log tables or log files saying that this table is exported successfully or imported successfully or loaded successfully at this time, and on top of that we will also store the information such as up to what date for a given table the data is loaded into this table, so that we can use that information in the next run to capture the delta. Okay, for example, you have the table called departments. You have 6 columns today. Tomorrow there could be 2 more columns, and if you want to capture only those 2 columns, you need to understand till what point you have already loaded and from what point you have to capture the data, and that information has to be logged somewhere. It could be log files or it could be tables in the database. Typically we use databases, database tables. It is because it is easy to query. We don't need to worry about writing complex code to get the last record from the log files. So typically we log that information of each run. After each run, into database. So you can use scoop eval command to connect to the database as part of your program or main application which performs the data integration on daily basis to insert or update that logging information. And again, when delta is captured as part of the next day's run, first it will issue the scoop eval command, identify the values that are required to perform the next import, and as part of the code we will be parameterizing all those things. So we have to get the values that has to be replaced the parameters for the next scoop import run, and then it will perform the it will be able to perform the delta operations. Okay, so that is the importance of scoop eval. It is primarily to update the logging information after the import is done, and then before the next import starts, to pull the parameter values so that scoop import can be generated dynamically for the next run using the parameters which are already logged. So eval can issue any command or invoke any procedure to invoke functions or procedures to get those details. And what scoop eval will do is it will just let me run this. I will answer the question in a moment. Mohan have asked a question. I will take care of that in a moment. So if you run this command, it is connecting to the retail_db database with using username and password, and then issuing a query called set count of 1 from order items. When you run it, the output will be displayed here. Okay, so this is displayed as part of the standard out, and this is displayed as part of the standard error. Okay, so if you are familiar with these things, you can redirect the information that is displayed as part of the standard out into some file and or into a parameter, and then you will be able to replace in the scoop import command with the appropriate values, and you will be able to perform the scoop import. So the way you can actually redirect is doing this one. So 2 is standard error. So let's see. Scoop underscore error dot log, and standard out is 1. Scoop out dot log, and hit enter. Okay, now you see that the output is not displayed on the standard out because we have redirected to these files, and then you can actually see cat scoop user error dot log. You can see the information, logging information is error dot log, and out dot log actually have the output. Okay, so you can use this information to replace as part of your program to run the subsequent import command. So scoop eval will be typically used both before the import command and after the import command to replace the parameters and to log the relevant information from the completed job. Okay, now I hope that answered your question, Gopi. If you have further question, let me know. Any chance of scoop having CDC logic as Oracle, etc. Golden Gate? Very good question. No, scoop runs by issuing the queries on the database and fetch the data, whereas Golden Gate reads data from transaction logs such as redo logs, and you cannot use Golden Gate in tandem with scoop. Golden Gate can be used in tandem with Flume or Kafka or Hive. So Golden Gate has the capacity to read the redo logs of database and write into either files or JMS queues. From there, you can use Hive queries or what is the second one? Flume or Kafka to get the streaming data from the JMS queues. So those are the things you should consider when you want to get data in real time. Okay, very good question. I hope it answered your question. Scoop is primarily to issue the queries and get the data and load into the target database. It is primarily to perform the data loads in batches, not in real time. Whereas Golden Gate is primarily to get data in sync, data to be synced in real time. Okay, so that is about getting started. Now we will talk about scoop import command. So let me go to the scoop import. So I will not be running all the commands. I will just explain most of the important parameters, and I will run only one import command here. But you have to execute all the commands to understand the behavior of different parameters. Okay, so when you actually start loading data from source databases into HDFS, as part of the initial load, you want to run you want to import all the tables within a schema or within a database. So there is a command called import all tables, and it will load the data for each table from the source database into HDFS. So let me run this command real quick. So here we are using -m space 4, which is num mappers, to invoke 4 parallel threads to process the data. Okay, so first let me delete Hadoop SS rm -r user training 8634 scoop import. So when you actually run these commands in CloudX Lab, you have to replace this directory because you have to work on your CloudX Lab home directory. Okay, it is not there, so I can directly run this command. Now let us run and see what goes. It is very important to go through the entire information which it generates until you are familiar with most of the stuff. Okay, so now if you see, even though I say import all tables, it is actually looping through all the tables in the database and issuing a query. Select t.star from categories as t. So what it will do is, and it has limit 1. Limit 1 means it will actually get only one record from the database. So using that one record, Scoop can estimate the data types of the columns. So this is primarily to understand what is the data type of the columns. Once it gets the data types of the columns, it generates a POJO or plain old Java object which will be used to compile a jar file. So you don't need to worry about what it will be generated. If you are a Java developer and if you want to see what it will generate, you can see this location. It has displayed that location here. You can go to that and you can look into the Java file. It will just generate a POJO plain old Java object which will have columns for each which will have class attributes for each of the columns in the table and getter and setter methods. So if you are a Java developer, you will understand. If you are not, you don't need to worry much about it. Once that Java class is generated, what Scoop will do is it will compile a jar file that needs to be submitted as MapReduce job. So this jar file is similar to our examples jar which we ran earlier to validate MapReduce jobs. It is similar to that. Once that is done, then it will actually submit a job. It will have map logic. It will not have reduce logic because Scoop import is primarily map only job, so it will not have reducer logic. It will have the job configuration. As part of the job configuration, and even before invoking the mapper job, if it has to take care of any other aspects of the import job, it will take care of it. Anyway, you don't need to worry much about it. Only thing you need to understand is when you issue the command, it will create a POJO class and it will compile a jar file, and that jar file will be submitted as MapReduce job. As we have seen with Hadoop examples jar, and word count program or random text writer earlier, when the job is submitted, you will get the URL to monitor the job. So you can use this URL. Okay, if you have already updated the host file, you can directly go to the browser and paste this. If you have not updated the host file, then you have to replace this with public DNS. These are private IPs. You have to replace with public DNS. Here it is trying to connect to 154. So go to MyLab, go to IP mappings, and check for 154, and you have to replace it with this. I am not sure why it is not connecting. I think port is not open. 8188 port is not open. That's why it is not connecting. But the main URL for the actual job is this one. This is for the application master. You don't need to worry much about it. This is the one for our MapReduce job. So we have to use this URL. This will work over there. Okay, and here you can see that for this categories job, it has used 4 mappers and no reducers because it's a map only job. That's why you see 0 here. Okay, and if you want to troubleshoot in case of any issues, you can click on this, go here and go to logs, and you can see the logs. If you want to get all the details, you can click for full log and you can see if there are any errors. So that is how you can troubleshoot. Similar to that, for each table, it will perform the same thing. In a loop, it will loop through all the tables when you run the import all tables. And once one table is completed, then only it will go to the another table, and slowly it will import all the tables. So there is a question from Gopi. Suppose in eval, if we use distinct operator with a where condition, won't we need the reducers? Eval does not use MapReduce at all. Okay, eval have only typically we will use only one parameter, which is query, and there we will give the database query. If you compare the eval command and the scoop import command, let me show you. So scoop import does not have query here. Okay, but if you go to getting started, yes, so that is a different thing. I will explain that in a moment. Okay, here we are talking about import all tables. Once we get into the import, I will explain. Okay, but don't compare eval with import and import all tables. Just remember that eval does not use MapReduce at all. That is more than enough. You don't need to worry much about eval. Okay, import and export are the ones which will do the heavy lifting of loading the data. Eval is just to issue a query, not to write data into HDFS, just to issue the query to see what is there in the table or what is there in the table. Or you can insert the data or update the data or invoke a function to capture certain information which can be used at the time of import or export, but not to import or export. Okay, anyway, so now let me go back here. So like that, it has gone through all the 6 tables and it has imported the data. So once it is imported, you can see fs-ls user training 8634 scoop underscore import and hit enter. You can see a directory for each of the table. Because we have specified warehouse directory, okay, within this directory it will create directory for each table. Okay, and when you run import all tables, you have to specify warehouse directory only, because you are trying to import multiple tables, and for each table it has to create a directory. Okay, so now there are many other parameters also, but these are the most frequently used parameters when it comes to scoop import all tables. If you want to change the type of the file, Scoop supports a text file by default, a sequence file, Avro data file, and also Parquet file. So if you want to use different file format to load the data, you can use like this, as Avro data file or as sequence file, etc. Okay, don't worry much about what are these file formats. We will talk about file formats some other time, not at this time. Just understand that if you are already familiar with multiple file formats, and if you want to use any of the file formats, it supports 4 file formats out of the box. You can go to the documentation and search for as hyphen. You can see here, as part of the import control arguments, you can see these 4 file formats. Okay, I will review all these control arguments in a moment. Yeah, I will get into those details. So please refrain, don't get into the out of context questions. So this is relevant question, good question from Mohan. Which file format gives better performance? So you won't see much difference in the performance wise from Scoop perspective. From Scoop perspective, even if there is any performance difference, it will be negligible. Okay, the performance aspects comes into picture with the tools you will use to process the data later. Okay, so Parquet file is columnar format, and if you want to store a fact table using columnar compression, then you should consider Parquet file. That is for the sake of processing, not for the load. So we will see that aspect later. Okay, but to answer your question, performance difference will be negligible for Scoop, even if there is any. But you need to decide on the file format based on the downstream processing you will be doing on this data. Okay. So yeah, now let me go back here. So the purpose of warehouse directory is that it can create a directory with the table name. So when we use Scoop import all tables, you have to specify like this. So I just ran Scoop import all tables to explain how it will actually run the query to get the metadata using limit1, create a Java file, compile into a Java file, and run the MapReduce job, and how we can access the logs for that Scoop command. So now in case of import all tables, it has submitted multiple MapReduce jobs. So whatever job fail, you have to go there and you have to look into the details to troubleshoot the issue. Now we will actually get into the Scoop import command itself. So earlier I just demonstrated how we run, and now we will actually get into what is the meaning of all these parameters. So first we will cover import all tables, and then we will get into the import. So if you scroll up, you can see that Scoop import all tables is 8 and Scoop import is 7. The reason why I typically start with Scoop import all tables is typically in the work environment, when you implement a project, import all tables is one-time activity. We will just do once, and we will start with that. And then for delta loads, we will typically develop a application around import command. We will not use import all tables for delta loads. That's why I'm starting with import all tables. So if job fails in between, how can we do recovery? Whether do we need to start from first? So if job fails as part of Scoop import, data will be deleted. You will not see data in HDFS. So you have to fix the Scoop command or the source data, and you have to rerun the job, and you don't find much issues. But commands such as import all tables are a little bit riskier. If import all tables fails, then you have to delete the entire warehouse directory like this, and then you can run the Scoop import all tables. So it depends upon the command which you are using, and the you have to take the necessary action depending upon its limitations or features. There is no one hard and fast rule about what we should do when we actually when the job actually fails, and how to recover depends upon the command we are using. Okay, so for import all tables, you have to just delete the directory and re-import the way I have done. Okay, so now let us see. Very good question. Now let us see all the common arguments and control arguments for import all tables. So the common arguments are primarily to connect to the database. So you can we have been using --connect to connect to the database using JDBC, and we have provided the JDBC URL. So some cases we have to provide connection manager, which is nothing but a class name that is part of the jar file. In most of the cases we don't need to do that, but in some cases if it is required, you can do that. You also have to specify the driver class in some of the cases. So Hadoop MapReduce home, again, it is not that important. Sometimes if the Hadoop MapReduce home is not identified by scoop, you can provide this one and parameter, and you can actually point to appropriate directory over there. So, and you can actually pass the password in 3 formats. You can use a password file. You can use -P to prompt for the password, and you can say --password and give the password. So this is the least recommended way of doing that. The best recommended way of doing it is by using password file, where you can actually restrict the permissions on the file for all other users on the OS. If you use --password, anyone who have access to the host can see the password, and it will be tough for you to transfer to migrate your code from lower environments to higher environments. So in actual applications, we always should use --password file, and the password file should not be means you should control the permissions on the password file on the OS level. Okay, verbose is to throw more information. We already seen username to pass the username. Connection parameter file, it's optional properties file that provides connection parameters. So instead of using password file, username, connect, you can using differently. You can just use one parameter file, and you can actually specify JDBC URL, username, and password in that. For smoother transition between environments, this is the best recommended way. --connection parameter file. You can use JDBC URL, username also with only password file, but you might have to introduce some intelligence to build the JDBC URL between the environments. So either you will have a separate properties file, and your shell script or program has to go through that properties file to get the JDBC URL host name and build the JDBC URL, username, and password, etc. You can do that way as well. But if you don't want to implement using shell scripting, you can also specify connection parameter file. For development environment, the file name will be same, but in the development environment, the file name will have development server related details. In production, it will have the production level details. So this is primarily to standardize your deployment process. Okay. Now comes the arguments which will actually perform the job to import the data. As I have already explained, no, I don't think so. You can try it out. I am not 100% sure on that. Okay. So as part of the as part of the control arguments, first thing you need to think about is the file format. The file format. By default, it's text file. You don't need to specify. If you do not specify, then it will store the data in the text file format. In this case, we have not specified as part of our scoop import. So when we actually do Hadoop fs -ls on scoop import, we can see the directories. And then if you check departments here, there will be n number of files, and that n comes from the number of mappers. In our case, number of mappers is 4, which is default also. Even if you do not specify -m4 or --num mappers 4, still it will use 4 mappers, and you will see 4 files for each of the table. Here we have 4 files, and we can actually cat on this file, Hadoop fs -cat, and hit enter. You can see that data is delimited by comma. It's a text data. Okay. If you use sequence file, data will be stored in sequence file format, which is binary format. Parquet file is columnar storage format. Avro data file is it uses Avro serialization. You don't need to worry about all these file formats at this time. You can explore about those things later. I will be covering Parquet file or ORC file format when we talk about Hive in detail, and also I will be covering a little bit about Avro file later. Okay, and then -- direct is to perform the direct import fast path. So it's kind of instead of issuing a select query, if you are familiar with bulk load utilities such as SQL loader, if you specify direct path in Oracle, it will try to bypass the CPU and memory. It will use very little memory, and directly the I/O channels will be copying data from the files into downstream place. So in this case, it simulates that it will be faster, but it is supported only with MySQL and Postgres. If you use direct on Oracle, it will not have any impact. Okay, it is primarily for the performance reasons to import using fastpath. Inline lob limit. So if you have 1 minute, I will come back to that question, Gopi. So inline lob limit. So if you have lobs, large objects such as glob, blob, etc., and if you want to load the data, and if you want to store up to a particular size inline of the record itself, then you can set this one. Okay, and -m or --num mappers is the one which will actually control the number of mappers. --warehouse directory is the one which you need to use so that the scoop import all tables can actually create the tables. If you want to use compression, you have to enable compression by just saying --compress, and --compress codec is to tell which algorithm is to use to compress the data. Again, we will get into details about compressions somewhere else. No need to worry about it at this time. But if you want to know the syntax, there is a code snippet here. You can see the sample for compression here. Okay, and then if you want to exclude few tables when you are performing import all tables, you can do that here, and then auto reset to one mapper. If you want to use only one mapper for each table without primary key, then you can perform this one. Okay, otherwise if you don't use this parameter, if one of the table does not have primary key, it will fail. It will abruptly stop the scoop import all tables command. You have to delete and you have to reload using import all tables with num mappers as one. But if you want to use higher parallel degree when primary keys are available, and use only one when primary key is not available on the table, you can specify this one. And why we have to have primary key, I will cover that probably as part of the next class. But this is about all the control arguments for import command as part of import all tables. And then there is output line formatting arguments. So there are arguments which will format the output. Okay, so for each column, if you want to enclose with a particular character, you can use enclosed by. So if you want to use double quotes, because here if you look at the data is comma separated, okay, and here in the name, if there is a comma in it, like foot comma where for some reason, then what will happen, it is like you don't know whether that foot comma where is one value or two values. It can lead into many issues. In that scenario, if you want to enclose each of the field with a separate character than the delimiter, you can use hyphen hyphen enclosed by, and you can say double quote, and automatically it will use a enclosing character. And in case of special characters, you can use hyphen hyphen escaped by. And then if you want to change the delimiter from comma to something else, and record level delimiter from new line character to something else. So in this case, comma is the field delimiter and new line character is the record level delimiter. Okay. So if you want to change those things, you can use fields terminated by to change the delimiter for each field, and lines terminated by to change the delimiter for each line. And then you can say MySQL delimiters. So whatever the default MySQL delimiters will be, those will be applied automatically, which is comma for fields, new line character for lines, slash for escape, optionally enclosed by is single quote. Okay. So optionally enclosed by is, so you, as I have explained earlier, instead of enclosing each and every field, if you just want to enclose only the ones which are having the actual delimiter. So for example, in this case, if footwear have comma in between and rest of them are fine, and if you want to only enclose those ones which have delimiter within the value itself, then you can use optionally enclosed by. So the difference between enclosed by and optionally enclosed by is enclosed by will enclose each and every field, whereas optionally enclosed by will only enclose those values which have delimiters in them. Okay. And then input passing arguments. So while getting the data itself, if you want to make any changes, you can use these input passing arguments. It is not that relevant for import at all. Typically these will be used for export. And these are Hive arguments. So if you want to load data into Hive using import all tables, you need to be aware of Hive arguments, which are similar to import statement itself. I will explain these things at the time of import command. Okay. I will defer it for now. There are few differences also between import all tables and import in most of these arguments, and I will highlight all those things also once we cover import command. So there is a question from Gopi. Let me check that. What is the direct path for the scoop import tables? I do not understand. So there is no direct path. There is only one control argument called hyphen hyphen direct, which uses direct path import. Yeah, you just say hyphen hyphen direct, that's it, to the existing command, and then it will try to use MySQL bulk load features and get the data a little bit faster. Okay. So that is about scoop import all tables. Import all tables, I have explained most of the arguments because these arguments are same in import also. And import all tables is not very important. There are many challenges with import all tables. A lot of guys tend to say, oh, we can use this, but it's not the case. Very rare cases it will work. You need to master the import command over import all tables, because if you use import command, if you develop application around it, you can use the same thing for the baseline load as well as delta loads. So import is the most important command. So now let us go to the import command. So when you run basic import statement, it will look like import all tables only. Only difference is it will only load one table. Okay, so let me go to the index here, go to the scoop import, and directly go to the arguments. So if you look into the common arguments, it's almost same except for the relaxed isolation. I don't know what this is. Set connection transaction isolation to read uncommitted for the mappers. Okay, so if you want to read the data even before data is being committed in databases such as MySQL, you can use this one. I don't think it will work with Oracle database. It might be risky to use this. Apart from this, everything else is same. No need to revise again for import command. And then once you scroll down, I'm not sure about the validation arguments. Okay, validation argument. So validate is primarily to validate whether your data is copied successfully or not. I have never used that before. I typically run the queries to make sure it is working or not, and then I will develop around it, and if there are any exceptions, I will try to troubleshoot and fix it. I think this is introduced as part of the latest versions, so you can actually look into these validation arguments so that the data that is loaded is validated immediately. Okay, and then import control arguments, hyphen append. So if you look into the import all tables, you don't find hyphen append. You only find directly these ones. Okay, so hyphen append is to get the data and append to the existing table. So already we have this department's directory, and if I want to as part of the initial load using import all tables, we got the data here, and going forward, if I want to load the data into this table, if I do not use, I think append is default. Let me see. Yeah, I think append is default. So even if you do not specify append, when you use import command, if the directory already exists, it will just load the data into it. And then these are file formats, and now we will get into the control arguments. So first, to understand the boundary query, first we need to see what it is all about. For that, we need to run simple import command, which I will be doing now. So I'll be using the same command here, and if you see here, I am specifying target directory, not warehouse directory. When you specify the target directory, you have to tell which directory the data has to be loaded into. It will not create subdirectory. You can use warehouse directory also as part of the scoop import command. When you use warehouse directory, and if you give this path, it will create the subdirectory with the table name, which is departments, and then load data into it. If you just specify target directory, it will directly load data into this directory. Okay, and now let me run this command. Mohan have asked a question. I will respond to that in a moment, and hit enter. Okay, so I have to append is not the default. It will by default fail. Append, I have to use append in this case because the directory already exists. Okay, now it will be able to load the data. Okay, let me check the question. Any easy method to combine data or query in scoop to Hive query to find out any differences in data load or any missed? No, it is not possible. You can't do that. You have to load data into Hive from scoop, and then only you will be able to compare with the existing data with data that is loaded using scoop. There is no easy way. Okay, now if you go into this, there is a bounding vals query here. So if you see here, it is actually getting minimum of department ID and maximum of department ID. If you go back to my previous picture, I have told that when we perform scoop import command, if we have 1 million records and if we are using parallel threads more than one, then these 1 million records have to be divided into 4 mutually exclusive subsets or chunks, data chunks. So there is a implicit logic which Sqoop have implemented for that. In this case, if the table have the primary key, so the departments table have the primary key, which is department ID, it will compute the min and max of the department ID. So in this case, if we have 1 million, if the minimum is, let's say, 100 or 1 and maximum is 1 million, okay, so it will get those values with that boundary query. Oh my god, shoot, how to get this? I don't know why it has, where is the rotate? Anyway, I will close this and start with a new one. Okay, we have this table with 1 million records. So the minimum is 1 and maximum is 1 million. Okay, and if you use number of mappers as 4, what will happen is, first by applying this boundary query, it will get this 1 and 1 million, and then it will perform logic internally to divide this data evenly. So 1 to 250,000 will go to one bucket, and then 250,000 1 to 500,000 will go to another bucket, and 500,000 1 to 750,000 will go to another bucket, and 750,000 1 to 1 million will go to another bucket. So this will be first chunk, this will be second chunk, this will be third chunk, and this will be fourth chunk. Okay, I will come back to that question. Let me finish this. Okay, so using these values internally, it will compute the query, it will generate the query, select star from table name where the primary key, department ID or whatever primary key it is, greater than or equal to 1 and less than 250,000. That will be one query, and the second one query will be greater than or equal to 250,000 and less than 500,000. So you will see 4 queries in the database from 4 different connections, which pass these ranges to the database, and it will start reading the data from the database. Each thread will read its own 250,000 records and write into HDFS. So that's the logic it uses. So the purpose of the parameter, now that's the logic which it uses internally, and the purpose of this parameter, where is this boundary query parameter, is in some cases, especially for mission critical applications from which we want to get this data. So if you know the deployment life cycle into production, what will happen? First, the code will be shipped to the production environment, and we will be deploying into the production, and then the user acceptance test team will actually perform smoke test. Okay, end-to-end smoke test to see that none of the important functionality is broken. That's the purpose of the smoke test. So to perform the smoke test, they will create some fictitious accounts. So for example, if it is a bank application, there will be some fictitious accounts which will be there, and they will be using those fictitious accounts to complete the smoke test in regression fashion. Okay, typically those fictitious accounts or fictitious IDs which will be used for the smoke test will be outliers. So in this case, let's say we have account numbers all the account numbers are 6 digits or 7 digits. So the first account number is 1 million, and we want to all the account numbers that are generated are between 1 million and 4 million. So even though you have 1 million records, it will be distributed across these 1 million to 4 million. But the fictitious accounts will be typically all 8s, all 9s, etc. So these will be the fictitious accounts which will be created for smoke test purpose. So these are outliers which are generated intentionally. And if you use number of threads as 4, and our minimum is 1 million and maximum is 9,999,999, and when it actually divides the data into 4 threads, only 2 threads will actually process this data. Okay, that too it will process unevenly, because almost 1 million to 2.5 million will be processed by this one. So it will be processing actually 1 million to 3.5 million will be processed by first thread, and 3.5 million to so let me do this. 1 million to 10 million divided by 4, the range it has how many? 900,000 records. 900,000 divided by 4. So the minimum is 1 million, maximum is this one, right? So it has almost 900,000 records, which means that 900,000 by 4, which is 225,000, right? So 1 million to 3 million 250,000 will be one thread, and then 3 million 250,000 to 2 million 250, we have to add this. It will be around 6,500,000. Okay, and then there will be 2 more threads. So the first thread will be processing will be processing most of the data, and rest of the 2 threads will not do anything at all. Only the first thread will be processing 70% of the data, and the second thread might be processing around 30% of the data. So the processing have become skewed, and the time to complete the scoop import job will take longer. Okay, so for that reason we should not directly run the scoop commands in those cases, and we can actually define the boundary query saying that I want to process data only between 1 million to 4 million, where we have all our data. All the 1 million accounts are in that range, and then you will address the skew significantly. Okay, so that being said, I will put a pause here because it's almost 1.5 hours and I didn't even start the questionnaire yet. So I will put a pause here and I will take the questions. So the question, there is already one question from Mohan. Is it based on number of rows or based out of value of key? After the import, that each of these 4 files will be further divided into 128 MB blocks and replicated 3 times in the HDFS. Second statement is correct. After the import, each of these 4 files will be further divided into 128 megabyte blocks and replicated 3 times in the HDFS. But I didn't get the first question. Is it based on number of rows or based out of value of key? I think you might have got this question answered with the explanation I have provided about how the ranges will be computed and how boundary query should be able to use to address. Is it the case, Mohan? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Mohan. You can even unmute and you can ask the question. When that's a very good question. When data itself is skewed, okay, then we have to use some that logic needs to be implemented as part of the data integration platform. Okay, we cannot address the all the scenarios. This is primarily to address those scenarios where the skewness is introduced for known reasons. Okay, And so there is no automatic way of taking care of when the data itself is queued. For that, you need to understand the capability of the source database. You have asked about question, asked the question about Golden Gate earlier. If you are familiar with Oracle, you have the row ID concept. You can use the row ID ranges to address the skew when the data itself is queued, but it is not very simple. It is a little bit complicated. If you are interested to know, we can take it offline. It is too much to discuss here when people are not from Oracle background. If you are from Oracle background and if you know about row ID ranges, I can explain it in detail offline. So the Raghavendra have a question regarding talent. Yes, Raghavendra. Yeah, let me talk about ETL tools. Why we should think twice before. Yeah, that's what. You can go to my my ITversity website, and you can actually, it is very well organized, and it is primarily from the perspective of the certification. Most of the important aspects are covered here. Okay, so you can go there and you can actually watch the videos that are already uploaded, start working on hands-on. If I'm not mistaken, you are fresher, right? You don't have a lot of experience before. Is that correct, or do you have prior experience? Yeah, so that's for that reason you have to practice hands-on. So a lot of the audience here are experienced guys, so they can connect to what I'm talking about. As you are fresher, you will not be able to. So for that reason, you should actually start performing hands-on, and then you will get questions. You have to rewatch, or you can ask me the questions as part of the questionnaire sessions, and I will take care of it for you. Even in the next class, you can ask questions related to already completed classes, but in the last 10-15 minutes after the class is completed, and I will take care of all your questions. Okay, so regarding Talend or any other ETL tool, one should think twice before using any ETL tool when you are actually loading data into Hadoop. So take the example of Informatica Talend. So these ETL tools provide two features. One is RDE, Rapid Development Environment, where you have the design mapper, mapping designer, where you say what is the source database, what is the source qualifier. It could be a file, it could be database, and then you have to perform the transformations by adding transformations, and then targets. Yeah. So that is rapid development environment, which will save a lot of time in development of ETL frameworks. And then on top of that, Informatica also provide you Informatica servers. So when you develop these mappings using Mapping Designer and submit it as a workflow, Informatica server have a software which can interpret these workflows and execute the software that is required to perform the complete ETL flow, and that is typically taken care in the Informatica server layer or Talend server layer. So any ETL tool provides two features. One is rapid development environment, second one is the server which will actually do the heavy lifting. So it works very well in traditional enterprise data warehouses where ETL is offloaded from the source database. So source database, we will not be performing any transformations. We will be just querying the raw data, and the transformations will be done in the Informatica layer before data is loaded into the target. So if you already have the experience, if you try to process hundreds of gigabytes of data every day, if you try to process few gigabytes of data on daily basis, it works fine. But if you try to process tens of or hundreds of gigabytes of data on daily basis, then Informatica server or Talend server will become bottleneck. So if you try to use those to perform the ETL, then the servers will become bottleneck. Instead, we should be able to leverage the Hadoop cluster, the scalability feature of Hadoop cluster, and if we have to do within the scope of Hadoop, this Informatica Big Data Edition and Talent Big Data Edition, they perform the transformations for the data that is already in Hadoop using MapReduce. But for the data that has to be fetched from Scoop, if it uses Informatica server or Talent server in middle, then performance might be bottleneck. So you might not be able to leverage the scalability of Hadoop cluster, and so that's the limitation with Talent or Informatica. You will be limited with the capacity they have when you try to perform the heavy lifting. So when you try to use, still you can use in some cases because it will reduce your development effort significantly, but if performance is the criteria, then you have to think twice before using those tools. I hope that answered your question about brief comparison about traditional ETL tools and Hadoop based tools. So the second, another question from Mohan is, any place in Scoop we define buffer size or transaction size to control rows imported? No, we don't do that. The only way to control the rows imported is by no, I don't think it is applicable. You can't do that when it comes to Scoop import. For Scoop export, you can do that. Did you come across importing from mainframe DB to relational databases? Yeah, for DB2 also, DB2 is a traditional relational database. It's the same thing. Instead of MySQL connector, you will be using DB2 connector and you will be connecting to the database. But if you want to get the mainframes, if you go through the documentation, there are in the import section, sorry, if you go to the index and search for mainframes, Scoop import mainframe is there. Okay, I have not tried that before because I need to have the environment to play that. So I'm not covering that because I haven't practiced that. So as I mentioned to you earlier, you have to practice before making any assumptions. If you have the environment where you can connect to the mainframes, you can prepare the material and I will try to upload the content for future audience. Okay. So out of context, while working, they wanted me to find one image where one person is there in some huge list of images. What kind of framework may be needed? That is okay. So it is not very easy to do that. Okay. In case of videos and images, you have to use some open source tools. I'm not very familiar with those tools. Google provides certain things, and you can see if it can be integrated with MapReduce, and you have to come up with that. So it's not very easy. You have to customize a lot of that. Yeah, as you mentioned earlier, as you mentioned yourself, it is out of context to Scoop. Yes, you have to use some third-party jar files if they are available to perform that. If you don't have third-party jar files, you have to develop MapReduce programs for that. And typically, when you try to process the images will not be 128 megabytes. It will be very small. First thing you need to keep in mind is you have to archive them and store it as an archive, and then you have to read the archive, unarchive, and then you should start processing the data to perform these things. Okay. So to clear the certification, so if you go through this one again under self-paced courses, you have the CCS, Spark and Hadoop developer certification. You have to go through this playlist. Okay, I have organized the material in such a way that as per the published curriculum, you can follow, and you can learn skills and you can practice and you can do the certification. There are other certification courses also I have uploaded, such as HDP CD without Java, etc. Yeah, those it will take time to upload into this website, but you can go to my YouTube playlist and you can cover those things. So the material related to certification can be used as reference. My classes will be a little bit different. It will be certification neutral. So in September, I am starting Big Data Engineer course, where once they go through that course, they will understand, they will scratch the surface, more than scratching the surface, but they will not get into too deep in any of the topics. They will understand all the core components, all the fundamental concepts of all the tools that are required for the big data engineer. And if they want to dig deep onto anything else, or if they want to give the certification, those will be available on my channel or on my website, and they have to follow these things to explore further. So I am trying to make sure that everyone have the knowledge of the breadth of the topics, and then use my courses online to actually go into the depth. So this is my last question. I will not be taking any more questions for today. Can you tell us how will be the questions in the certification for Sqoop import? So it's a subjective exam. If you are giving CCA, they will give the use case and they will ask you to load the data from a source database into HDFS or Hive table using Hive import. You have to understand the logic. It will be an open book exam. You can refer the Sqoop documentation which we are seeing here, and then you can actually implement the logic. They will ask you to store, to save the code snippets in one location, and ask you the data should be in a particular location, and you have to comply to that, and then they will evaluate and they will mark it as correct or wrong. Even if the Sqoop command is correct, but if you are using the target directory which they have not specified as part of the question, then they can mark your question as incorrect. So you have to be extremely careful. Okay, Sqoop is very important for CCA certification. They are asking at least 3 to 4 questions on Sqoop itself. If you go through my material, you will be able to crack it with ease as long as you practice. At least 50 people have acknowledged so far. I hope a lot more people have cleared the certification, but at least 50 people have acknowledged. And only a couple of guys, the 2 freshers, who have struggled with Sqoop, because they started using localhost or quickstart.cloudera to connect to the database when the database is on a different host, and they failed. Means he spent almost an hour in that itself, and he failed the certification. He is the first candidate who actually reported. I think he's first or second person who have acknowledged that my material have helped, but because of his lack of understanding about the JDBC, he struggled in the certification and he failed. Okay, so I hope that answered your question. Practice is key. You have to go through those things. Yes, that's correct. Those videos are primarily for the certification purpose. Here I am getting into more practical details, which will help you in many scenarios in designing the applications once you get the job, to face the questions in the interviews, etc. Okay then, thank you very much. See you on Monday night for you and Tuesday morning for me. Have a nice weekend. Bye.